Hello guys, welcome back. I'm Yusuf Shakeel and you're watching JavaScript tutorial series. In this video, we are going to learn about objects. So let's get started. Alright guys, so I have opened the project folder in Sublime Text. And inside the project folder, I have created a new file, objects.html. And I have written the following code. And inside the JS folder, I have created objects.js file, which is this one. And I have included this objects.js file inside this HTML file using this script tag. And now let us go ahead and open this in Chrome. So objects.html. And we'll also open the developer tools. So we'll go to view, developer, and we'll select the dev tools. And we'll go to console tab. And at this moment it is empty. That means we don't have any error. So what is an object? Well, an object is a special variable in JavaScript that can hold multiple values. So object, a special variable that can hold multiple values. Now let's take a small example. Let's say we want to store name of a student and we want to store the ID of that student. So we have two values that we want to store. So if we are using simple variables, then we'll need two variables to store those two values. So this is using simple variables. So we'll need a variable, let's say name, that will hold the name of a student, let's say Yusuf, Shakeel. And we'll need another variable to hold the student ID. So let's say ID, let's say S123. The problem with simple variable is that at any given point of time, it can hold only one single value. Now, if we want to store multiple values in a single variable, we'll need an object. We'll create an object. So in JavaScript, to create an object, we use the curly brackets. So let's say we are going to create a student object. So we'll write var, name of the object, which is student, equal to, and we'll use the opening and closing curly brackets. Now inside the opening and closing curly brackets, we have property name and property value. Please note, objects consist of properties and values. So objects consist of properties and values. So we want to store the name of the student. So the property will be name. And to assign a value to this name property, we use colon, and then we assign a value. So Yusuf, Shakeel. And to add another property to this student object, we use comma. And the second property is ID because we want to store the ID of the student. So we'll write ID, colon, and then value that we want to store in the ID property, which is S123. And now, if we console log student, and if we save the file and go back to Chrome, and if we reload, we get the following output in the console. So we have an object and it consists of property and values. So in this case, the first property is ID and its value is set to S123. Second property is name and it is set to Yusuf Shakeel. Alright, so let's talk about the type of values that we can assign to a property of an object. So values that we can assign to a property of an object. So we can assign null value, we can assign undefined, we can assign numbers, string, even object, functions, and even array. We'll learn about arrays in the arrays tutorial. Now let's say we have an object, sample, and it has 7 properties. So let's say the first property, prop1, is having value null. The second property, prop2, is set to undefined. The third property, prop3, is set to a number value, let's say 1, 2, 3. The fourth property, prop4, is a string, let's say hello world. The fifth property, prop5, is an object. So we can assign an object value to the property by using curly brackets. And let's say it has some properties and values. Let's say A, which is 1, or let's say B, which is, let's say, hi. Now let's say the sixth property is a function. So to create a function, like we did in the previous videos, we use the function keyword, and we don't need any name for this function because we are assigning this function to this property name, which is prop6. So all we have to do is use the parenthesis and opening and closing curly brackets. And let's say it has console.log. I am inside a function assigned to prop6. And we can also have array value assigned to a property of an object. So let's say prop7 is having an array. So we create an array by using square brackets, and inside this, let's say we have 3 numerical values, 1, 2, and 3. Please note, we'll learn about arrays in the arrays tutorial. So for now, just remember, we create array by using square brackets, and array consists of elements. So we have an object named sample, and it consists of 7 properties, and each property is assigned a different type of value. Property 1 is set to null, property 2 is set to undefined, property 3 is set to a number value, 1, 2, 3. Property 4 has a string value, property 5 contains an object value. Then we have property 6, which is set to a function, and inside that function body we have this console log, and property 7 is set to an array. So if we now console log sample, we'll get this sample object in the console. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, and let me clear the console, and if we reload, we get this sample object. So if we open it, we can see property 1 set to null, property 2 set to undefined, property 3 set to 1, 2, 3, property 4, which is a string hello world, property 5 is an object. You can see it is written object. So if we open this, we get the property and value of the object that was assigned to property 5, which is A set to 1 and B set to hi. Then we have property 6, which is a function. Then we have property 7, which is an array. You can see it is written array. And you can also see within the parenthesis 3, which is telling us that there are 3 elements inside this array. So if we open this, we can see we have some key value pairs. And these are index of the array element, and these are the values of the element. We'll talk more about arrays in the array tutorial, but for now, just remember, array elements are indexed. That is, array elements start with position 0. So the first element, which is value 1, is stored at index 0. The second element, which is 2, is stored at index 1. And the third element, which is 3, is stored at index 2. Moving on. So let's say we have another object for a player. So this time we are going to create an object which will represent a player of any game, let's say cricket or football or anything. So to create an object, we'll write var, and let's say the name of the object is player, and we'll use the opening and closing curly brackets. A player will have a name, so we'll create the name property and we'll set the value to, let's say, Billy. And player will have score, so we'll create another property, and let's say this player Billy has scored, let's say, 10. And this player belongs to a team, so we'll create another property, team, and let's say name of the team is team A. And now if we console log player, save the file and go back to Chrome, and if we clear the console and reload, we get the object player, and it consists of some properties and values, name of the player Billy, score 10, and team A. So let's talk about how to access these properties that belongs to this object. So the first topic is accessing the properties of an object. In order to access a property of an object, we use the dot operator. So for example, if we want to print the value stored in this name property of this player object, we'll use dot followed by the property name, which is name in this case. So if we want to console log, we'll write player dot name. And if we save the file, go back to Chrome, and if we reload, we get Billy. Similarly, let's say if we want to print the value stored in this team property, we'll write console.log, name of the object dot, and name of the property, which is team. So we'll write team. And now if we go back to Chrome, and if we reload, we get team A. Now let's say we want to add a new property to this player object, which is a function. So we are going to add a method to this player object. So we'll use comma, and let's say the name of the property is greetings, and it's a function. So we'll use the function keyword, and we don't have to write the name, but we'll need the parentheses and the opening and closing curly brackets. And let's say inside this function, we have console.log, and let's say the greetings is hello world. So we have added another property to this player object, and this property is a function. Now let's see how to call or invoke a function. And if you remember, in the functions tutorial, we learned that if we want to call or invoke a function, we write the name of the function followed by parentheses. Calling or invoking a function. So in order to invoke this greetings function, we'll write name of the object, which is player, then dot property name, which is greetings. And since this greetings is assigned a function, and to call or invoke a function, we use the parentheses. So we'll write parentheses. And now if we go back to Chrome and reload, we get hello world. And we also get undefined. And this undefined is coming from line number 66, which is this one. Now, why are we getting undefined? Well, if you remember, functions by default will return undefined. So if we want to return a value from this function, we have to use the return keyword. So let me comment this, and let's say this greetings function is going to return this greetings message. So we'll write return, and within double quotes, hello world. So now if we invoke or call the greetings method, this method or this function will return hello world. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, clear the console, and if we reload, we get hello world and we don't get undefined. Alright, so we have seen how to access property of an object. We have also seen how to add a function, that is how to add a method to a property of an object. And we have also seen how to call or invoke a function, that is method of an object. Now let's add a new property to this player object. So adding a new property to an object. We have two ways to add a new property to an object. We can use the dot operator. So let's say if we want to add a match property to the player object, so we'll write player dot name of the property, which is match, equal to, and then we'll assign some value, let's say 3. And now if we console log player, we'll get this new property attached to this player object, and it will be set to 3. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, clear the console and reload, we get the object. And if we check the object, we get match set to 3. Another way of adding this match property to this player object is by using the square brackets. So let me comment this, and let's say we want to add this match property having value 3 to this player object. And this time we are going to use the square brackets. So we'll write player, opening and closing square brackets, and inside double quotes, we'll write the name of the property, which is match, equal to, and we'll set the value to 3. And we'll save the file. And now if we console log player, we'll get this match property set to 3. So if we go back to Chrome, clear the console, and if we reload, we get the match property assigned to the player object, and this match property is set to 3. Now let's say we want to add a new property to this player object. And let's say that new property is a function or method. And when that function is called, it returns the score of the player. So let's say the new property is getScore, and it is a function. And when this function is called, that is when this method is invoked, it returns the score of the player. So score. And if we want to invoke this function, which is assigned to this getScore property, which is a property of the player object, we have to write console.log name of the object dot name of the property, which is getScore, and since it's a function, we'll use parentheses. And now if we save the file, go back to Chrome, clear the console, and if we reload, we get an error. And this error is score is not defined. And this is coming from line number 60, which is this one. But wait a minute, we already have score, a property defined. But why are we getting score is not defined at line number 60? Well, this is because we don't have a score variable defined inside this function. So for example, if we have a score variable inside this function, and if it is set to, let's say, 1000, and now if we go back to Chrome, clear the console and reload, we get 1000. But this is not the solution. We want this score, which is 10. So if we remove this line, or let me comment this, and if we again go back to Chrome and reload, we get the same error. Score is not defined. So how are we going to access this score from inside this function? Well, in this scenario, we have to use the this keyword. So a this keyword in JavaScript is a special keyword. And when we use the this keyword inside an object, then the this keyword points at the object. So if we want to get the value stored in this scope property of this player object from inside this function, we have to use the this keyword followed by dot followed by the name of the property. So at this line, we have to write this dot scope. So this line is now telling us that we are targeting this player object and we want the value stored in the scope property of this player object. That is this one. So this will return 10. So now if we save the file and go back to Chrome, clear the console and reload, we get 10. Alright guys, this brings us to the end of this tutorial. I'll post the tutorial notes on my website uiclassroom.com, and all the code that we are writing in this tutorial series, I'll put them in my GitHub repository. You will find all the important links in the video description, so please check that out. And if you find this video interesting, then please like this video and please subscribe my channel. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, and like always, stay happy and keep smiling. Bye.